So, guys, am I coming across really robot-y sounding?
No, but I do think that your connection to Wi-Fi might be inconsistent just the tiniest bit.
Mm.
And meanwhile, Tejas, is there something we can actually? One thing is, what mic are you? Is you using the built-in mic?
I'm using the built-in mic on my laptop.
That's part of the problem, right, Harold? I mean, the built-ins are just not that good. There's not a lot I think we can do about that, other than if you can get closer to it, maybe.
Yeah, and let me place something underneath of the laptop as well so that it isn't bouncing there.
And with that, folks, welcome to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, where we bring you highlights from some of the great shows across the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
Our compatriot Patrick Dixon is on the road this week, but we are so lucky to have our summer intern, Thejis, on the show. Thejis, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Harold. I couldn't or wouldn't want to be anywhere else at the moment, so it
Oh,
works
we'll
out
change
pretty well.
that. We'll change that. You're gonna you're gonna have to rethink that by the time this is done.
Obviously, he's new blood. He's new blood. We are really happy to have you here with us, and let's get the show on the road. To you, Harold.
All right, Chris. So this week, workers at a gender-affirming care clinic in Washington State explain why they organized a union after management allegedly retaliated against worker activists.
One of our bosses, one of the owners on a lantry, has basically expressed hostility to the ideas of union, calling them cults.
Amazon worker organizers in California discussed the challenges of building a union inside one of the world's largest and most anti-labor employers.
Why it was so important to me to unionize is because we don't have a seat at that table when they talk about our compensation packages.
They just tell you what it's going to be.
Yeah. It's the shareholders that are at that table deciding what us workers are going to get for that year. Now, these are shareholders who are multimillionaires, billionaires who don't work or live like we do.
Australian Indigenous activists mark, and this is real, National Sorry Day, and they discuss the continuing impact of child removals on First Nations communities.
You're Aboriginal in Australia. You are definitely assumed to be a bad mother, to be a bad community member, to be not good society. That's what white society painted of us. You know, the First Nation people.
We'll also hear from Texas labor leader Rick Levy on organizing in a right-to-work state.
One of the really interesting things about right to work is that sometimes I feel like we're hungrier or we're scrappier in a way because we know we don't have that automatic membership and we have to organize every day just to keep people in the union.
El Cafecito del Dia looks at the history of Mexican-American families targeted during mass deportation campaigns and why that history still matters today.
Instead of creating ways to protecting mixed-status families and allow them to remain together, the goal under this administration is not to keep families together, but to remove them together, similarly to what happened during the interwar period.
And Say What, one of my favorite podcast titles, explores how deeply held beliefs shape our responses to work, life, and mental health.
That's why small things can hit so hard, and a single mistake can feel so big. Because it's not about the moment, it's about the core belief beneath the moment. It's like an iceberg. You only see what's above the surface, but the real weight and girth of it is beneath the surface.
That's all ahead on this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. Cue the music, Chris. Except it's probably already been playing the whole time. Who knows?
It has been. It has been. All right, folks. First up, Labor Radio on KBOO takes us to Vancouver, Washington, where workers
I used to live. Sorry, go ahead.
Just step all over my line. That's okay. I don't mind. where workers at a gender-affirming care clinic say a union drive was met with resistance from management. They explain why they organized and what happened next.
I am so glad that Labor Radio on KBOO did a story on this. I mean, it's an electrolysis clinic, and a lot of people aren't going to pay attention to a strike there, but these are really important issues.
I know some people in interesting jobs have been organizing, but I was like, when the electrolysis workers are organizing, you know something is going on.
Yo, what's up, everybody? You were listening to KBOO 90.7 FM Portland, streaming all across the world at KBOO FM. Just put it in your browser, and we're with you wherever you want us to be. Now, I'm Poxy Leonard here, and they let me on during daylight hours, so watch out. So, all that said, tonight, I'm here talking with Deja and Rain from Real You Electrolysis Workers United. That's right, real union here. And a group formed by workers at Real You Electrolysis in Vancouver, Washington. And we're going to discuss an ongoing labor dispute that has resulted in a walkout and a strike. Now, the dispute began after a coworker was terminated in April, leading employees to begin discussing workplace concerns and organizing efforts. So workers say they have this support for unionization here, which grew quickly with more than 70% of practicing clinicians signing a petition, seeking voluntary union recognition. Now, organizers say additional employees involved in those efforts were actually later terminated, leading workers to walk out and protest in solidarity. So workers involved in the effort believe those actions were connected to their organizing activity. Now, tonight, we're here and we're going to discuss and hear directly from someone involved, walk through the timeline, and better understand how things reached this point. So, Deja, Rain, thank you for being here tonight. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having us, Poxy.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Now, for people just hearing about this for the first time, who are you and what is Real You and the Real You Electrolysis Workers United?
Of course. So Rain and I are both practicing clinicians at Real You Electrolysis. For those that don't know what electrolysis is, it is a permanent hair removal method. It is primarily used for gender-affirming care for transgender patients who are seeking to remove unwanted hair, either for cosmetic reasons, dysphoria reasons, or in preparation for gender-affirming surgeries. Rain and I and most of the practicing clinicians at Real You Electrolysis, we are also trans ourselves. So it is kind of a special place in that I can't really think of any other jobs that I've had or that I've even heard of where you can have a staff of predominantly trans people working with predominantly trans people. But yeah, that is kind of the background of what we do. Would you like me to say more about?
Yeah, I mean, so let's say, let's go back to the beginning here. Now, so what's happened that started this whole process for the conversation here tonight? Because you all have been picketing all weekend, so let's take it back to the beginning there.
Yeah, well, so we have to go kind of far back to get to the real beginning. One of the things that makes this workplace special, aside from the fact that it's predominantly a trans space, is that most places, if you're going to practice electrolysis, you need certification. What Real You has offered to their employees is basically, in Washington, you can practice without certification as long as you have a certified clinician on site.
Okay.
So they predominantly hire people who are not certified electrologists, train them, and then will offer to send them to school to get their certification in exchange for signing a 4-year work contract, which if you fail to achieve your certification, or if you quit, or if you are terminated, a full amount of usually $21,000 is due for a payment effective immediately. So most of us took this job because we wanted to become electrologists, couldn't afford to put ourselves through school, and thought, well, it's kind of a big commitment, but it seems like this is a great place to work, a great opportunity, kind of worth the risk, maybe. That being said, it is kind of a condition of employment to agree that you will sign the promissory note to go to school. It was something they had every one of us sign our very first day, along with the rest of the employment agreement.
Okay, so like the majority of the staff has signed on to this agreement then, is what
The entirety of the staff.
The entirety of the staff, all right,
Yes.
okay. Yeah.
So where our current organization efforts began started around one of our coworkers who is pretty near and dear to a lot of us who work there. She's been with the company for quite a long time, has a stellar reputation, absolutely one of the most gifted practitioners there. She was kind of one of the first up to start schooling when Real U Electrolysis opened their own schooling program on site.
Okay.
Within a few weeks of starting this schooling, she was terminated with rather suspicious circumstances. And basically, management moved immediately to try to collect the $21,000. For all of us, knowing that this person was terminated, and the circumstances around that termination were basically did not jive with the company's stated disciplinary policy. The reasons were flimsy, possibly even fabricated. We all got scared because if somebody who is so good at her job can be terminated while not even practicing, just being in school, pretty much any of us at any time could just as likely be terminated.
You've mentioned more than 70% of the support comes from your clinicians. So I mean, I know
Yes.
that you mentioned 11 people earlier, but the staff is small. You know, this is a smaller business, so it's like a pretty super majority there.
Yes.
Now, with that being the case, you know, was there like a particular moment outside, like the things, had anything kind of shifted or escalated prior to this? Is there a turn in culture, like in weeks coming up to this, or were the owners resilient or resistant to the ideas of the union prior? Anything of that nature?
Oh, yes. I mean, one of our bosses, one of the owners on a lantry, has basically expressed hostility to the ideas of union, calling them cults. She has...
That's pretty hostile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She has said things like she wants to be a billionaire, she wants to be on the Forbes 500. She said, if you give transgender people a decent job and a modicum of respect, they will march into hell for you. So she clearly has targeted her hiring efforts to people that she believes she can exploit. Based on things that she has said to us.
All right, well, Deja, Rain, thank you for joining me here on the air on KBOO 90.7 FM.
Hey, this is Lena from the Work Stoppage Podcast. We're a proud part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, more than 200 labor radio and podcast shows across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where the people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
Next, Riverside Rank and File talks with Amazon worker organizer Nanette Placencia about the challenges of building a union inside one of the world's largest employers and why workers keep trying.
And I don't think they're going to stop trying anytime soon.
It's going to be a long effort, it seems. So, actually, she mentions one other union that's, or one other Amazon facility that's organized with the Teamsters in Southern California. But I looked and there are 5 other facilities at the moment in Southern California that are organized with the Teamsters. So,
well, yeah, that's a hotbed of organizing at Amazon facilities. You know, Teamsters 1932, who also have a Labor Radio Podcast Network show, the Worker Power Hour. They're centered there in that area. And Randy Corrigan, their Secretary Treasurer, he is leading the fight. So if you want to see what's going on when it comes to organizing Amazon distribution centers, you should be looking at San Bernardino County.
I'll have to take a look at their podcasts.
This is Riverside Rank and File, and I'm your host, Steve Matthews. We have our guest today, Nanette Placencia, who is from Moreno Valley Amazon facility, has been an employee for over 10 years in Amazon, and has quite the important information for us all to hear about what it's like to work there and what she's been involved with to try to give workers a voice to have a union in Amazon. Welcome, Nanette.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Your facility, Moreno Valley, which is called ONT8, but not Ontario, because that was
Correct.
that was my mistake. But how many employees are there?
So we have about 1,000 employees around there, maybe 1,200 at most during peak. That is our guesstimation through us being able to find out what we can. And that was another big issue that I learned about, that me and my coworkers ran into as we were trying to unionize. We ran into the issue of, we knew there was a law saying that we had to get 30% of our authorization cards signed by our coworkers that worked inside the warehouse. So we knew that. But the second issue was, we didn't know how many worked there. So we said, okay, well, let's go get the numbers. We thought we could go up to HR and say, hey, we need to know how many people work here, because we knew that there was a law that said we needed 30%. So we assumed there was a law that said, okay, you get to know how many people work in your warehouse. So I went up to HR and I asked them, okay, can I please have a sheet or know how many people work in my warehouse? And they kind of laughed and said, what? And I was like, yeah, I would just like to know how many people work in my warehouse. And they said, sorry, we don't provide that. Yeah.
So we're not going to give you the information to help you. So, but then at some point you reached out to a particular union. What was the first step you did after you talked to your coworkers and a number said they were interested along with you? Who did you reach out to first?
It was in 2020. That was when I first started. In 2020, I tried to run for city council in Paris, where I live. And so I went to a meeting where they had a bunch of different union organizations there to see if they would help in donating to my campaign. So I met them all there and I had to present a speech and they asked me questions and stuff. And I did that. And then at the end, I said, if any of you do not support me, okay, I'll take that. I understand. You have your reasons. Okay. But the main thing is, can you please send me someone to help me unionize my Amazon facility? And I walked out. So after that, my information got passed around and I got a phone call a few weeks later and it was from the United Steelworkers Union.
Oh, okay. From the Steelworkers First.
Yes. So they were the first ones who reached out and really wanted to help. And they were great. They really did help. Yeah. They taught me and my coworkers a lot. We learned about laws that helped us, that protected us while trying to unionize, which we had no clue before. And they were really great. And we even actually started to get union authorization cards signed under them. And we started that with the steelworkers. Yeah. But that didn't last too long. I think because we were so new at it and didn't know too much, that a lot of my coworkers they weren't too sure. So we kind of broke off and it ended. So that was a sad thing, but they were really good. I wish we would have kept longer with them.
It's not uncommon that the first time people try to unionize, that it doesn't work and management will say what they have to say and people don't know to believe or not.
Yeah.
And sometimes the second time or third time around, it's a lot clearer with people what you need to do.
Yeah. And then that's when we did have our second time around was with the Amazon Labor Union. And with them, it was great too. They were great because they were workers just like us. They knew how it was in the facility. They went through the exact same thing that we did. They knew how it was in there. They knew how Amazon operated. They knew what to expect. And so we had that common bond.
Are these the same people that unionized in New York?
Yes, they were the same workers in New York. And they still worked there too as workers. Besides Chris Smalls, everybody else on the ALU was still employed at Amazon. So some of them would come and help us too when we would be outside trying to sign union authorization cards.
Really appreciate you taking the time to be here and for your 10 years of dedication to your coworkers, because that's something that deserves respect. I'm Steve Matthews, and this is Riverside Rank and File. Hi, this is Steve Matthews, the host from Riverside Rank and File. We're part of a network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. Find us at laborradionetwork.org. Thank you.
Over on Australia's Solidarity Breakfast, Indigenous activist Auntie Ria discusses National Sorry Day, the legacy of the stolen generations, and the continuing fight for justice for First Nations families.
So I just got to say, I've been to Australia. My best friend lives there, and there are lots of bad things that happen in Australian history, which I'm not going to get into. But the fact that they have a National Sorry Day, I just got to give it up for them. I think that is a really cool thing. And I think it'll be a while before. Can you imagine under the current administration, it would not be National Sorry Day. It'd probably be something that we can't say on network radio.
It would be National Never Say You're Sorry Day, because that's weak.
This was an interesting thing for me too. I was wondering how long it took them to establish a National Sorry Day.
You're back with Annie and Tobias on Solidarity Breakfast on 3CR, your community radio station. Don't forget Radiothon's coming up, and of course we're on our live program for Radiothon is the 13th of June. Auspicious or not? On the line we've got Auntie Rayo. Is that how I say your name?
Good morning, darling. No, it's Rio, as in Rio de Janeiro.
Good on you. Good morning. How are you? I hope you're nice and rugged up.
Well, no, I was actually waiting yesterday for, what am I going to say today? But that's okay. That's me. I am.
You're ahead of yourself. Well, I'm glad you picked up the phone for us today. National Sorry Day on Tuesday, the 26th of May.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about why it's so important for everybody to be aware of this day.
Well, it's really important to, we commemorate the national apology, but because we're not we're having a march because we're not disrespectful of the Stolen Gen members who never returned home, who never got to hear the apology, as farcical it seems to me. But we want to say that if you say sorry, you don't do it again. Yeah. So that was a very, very emotional day for everyone, every Aboriginal in Australia, and we're feeling a sense of calm that some of our Stolen Gen members passed away with a sense of closure because of that apology.
Yep.
And not knowing that, what are you going to do with the apology, you know? So, nothing's been implemented to say it won't happen again. But actually it is. It's not so-called stolen anymore. It's a legal entity now to remove our children forcibly.
And it's at some of the highest numbers ever recorded, really.
Oh, absolutely. Just do the research, do the research. We're not doing this for nothing. We're actually on the ground, going into courts, going into homes. We as GMA wanted to say that have that Aboriginal representative when you go in to remove children, when you go in to make sure the child is supervised for no reason. They're saying that the child may. So three-letter word, very strong in our community, and it instills fear in mums and dads and grannies, grandparents, that, this big, what do you call it, $1 million organisation can just step up and take your child.
I've had someone tell me, a young Aboriginal woman, mother, talk to me about how when these people, the welfare people, talk to her, they assume that she's a bad mother. You know what I mean? Like from the beginning, from the it's not the same interaction as they'd have with a white mother. That's her impression.
Darling, if you're Aboriginal in Australia, you are definitely assumed to be a bad mother, to be a bad community member, to be not good society. That's what white society had painted of us. The First Nation people. So we're not surprised that you're getting told that. That's how they are, and for us to sit in places, like in the space where we have to say, what's your concerns here? Oh, the mother was a victim of domestic violence. Well, she didn't hit herself in the face, but you're taking her children?
Yeah.
And that's where we step in. Unfunded. We're not funded or anything like that, so we go in. And we say, why is this on the rise when we've got so many ACOs, which is Aboriginal Community-Controlled Organisations, out there? Isn't prevention better than cure? Exactly.
Thanks for talking to us this morning, Artie Ria.
Hey, this is Dan Golodner from Tales from the Ruther Library. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
All right, up next, organizing in a right-to-work state is not easy, but retiring Texas AFL-CIO leader Rick Levy says it can make unions stronger. He talks with the Heartland Labor Forum about building worker power in Texas.
It is so great to hear Rick Levy freed from having to be the president of the Texas AFL-CIO and able to go around and talk about what it's like to actually organize and run unions in Texas. I think we're going to hear a lot more from him in the coming years.
You are listening to 90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. Stay tuned for the Heartland Labor Forum, radio that talks back to the boss.
All right, it's time for the second half of the show, and the song you just heard was Working Class, and it was by John Lennon. And once again, I'm Tom Gepkin, and I'm the president of CWA Local 6360, and Judy Morgan, president pro tem of AFT 691. Leading a state AFL-CIO, it's a lot of work, traveling from city to city, organizing, working with union partners, attending city council meetings, working at the state capitol to make sure anti-labor bills are stopped or at least watered down. Leading a state AFL-CIO in a labor-friendly state in a labor-unfriendly state that only meets every other year is one of the toughest jobs in the country. Tonight we visit with Rick Levy. He is recently retired as head of the AFL-CIO in Texas, widely considered one of the most labor-unfriendly states in the nation. He'll tell us how he navigated the state capitol and worked to grow the labor movement and make things safer and better for union workers in Texas. Rick, thanks for coming on to the show and welcome.
Are you kidding? Thank you so much.
So how big is your membership?
Okay, so here's the thing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Texas has the fourth highest number of union members in the country of any state.
Wow.
Now, our density is very low. It's like 4-point-something%. But we got a lot of people here in Texas. And so we have, at the state federation, we have about 250,000 affiliated members in the state of Texas. And I mean, I don't like to come on here and start arguments or anything. But when you were talking about at the beginning about how hard the job was, it was the best job anybody could ever have. I mean, if you ever get to spend time with Texas unionists and be part of weaving together people's interests and helping lift up the struggles that people are going through and getting to fight side by side with some of the greatest unionists in the country. I mean, that is not a hard job. That is a dream job. And yeah, there was hard things about it, but no, it was incredible run.
Now, you're originally from St. Louis. And,
that's right. Yeah.
What are some of the differences when you compare Texas, which we just said was a right-to-work state, and Missouri, which has fought off right-to-work when it comes to labor issues?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, the biggest difference, obviously, is that the barbecue in St. Louis is much more about pork, and the barbecue here is much more about beef. When it comes to the labor movement and right to work, Texas was the birthplace of right to work. And Texas, that's where it came from. And it came from the idea that we couldn't have a situation where black workers were allowed to be in the same organizations as white workers, and white workers would be stuck being in organizations that were integrated. And that was the roots of the whole right to work effort. So it's deeply ingrained in the kind of establishment Texas legal framework. And there hasn't really been a serious attempt to roll it back since the 1980s, when there was an effort to put it in the state constitution, which the labor movement then defeated. But it's Texas. I never could figure out why we have so many working class people, so many poor people in this state, that people are taken in by the notion that unions are not here to help. And so that's been a really big effort to kind of continue to take that message beyond our membership, to educate folks about what a union really is. And I will say that for the last 4 years, Texas union membership has grown, even as places in the other states have declined. There's real momentum here as people are starting to understand. In Missouri, you have a real tradition of, you have auto plants where people have been union from the very beginning. You have manufacturing base where people have been union from, and that's part of the culture of the state, I would say.
Right.
Here, it hasn't been quite like that. Here, a lot of people are like, oh, we have unions in Texas? To this day, people think that being right to work means unions are illegal, or that you can't be a union if you're a teacher. Now, teachers can't bargain in Texas. I don't know. I can't remember about Missouri. Teachers don't have collective bargaining. Public employees generally don't have collective bargaining in Texas. But public employee unions are our biggest unions in Texas. We organize anyway. We have to. And we don't have a contract, but we have the ability to organize and hold employers accountable that way. So I think it's just a historical kind of cultural understanding of what being in a union is. And I think we've had to do a lot of work to kind of bring that acknowledgement to folks here.
Even if you can't bargain a contract, you can still have influence if you have a large group.
1,000%. I mean, I think one of the really interesting things about right to work is that sometimes I feel like we're hungrier or we're scrappier in a way, because we know we don't have that automatic membership and we have to organize every day just to keep people in the union. And I think that what we understand here is that our power doesn't come from the written word of a contract, is that the written word of a contract comes from our power. And even if we don't have that contract, we still have the power to come together, to organize, to agitate, to elect people, et cetera, to kind of make sure our voice is heard.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciated you being on the show tonight. And we wish you a lot of good luck in your retirement, and relax, take some time for yourself.
Thank you. You guys have been doing this for how long, Judy?
Well, Judy Ansel's been the person who organized this 37 years, has been doing the Heartland Labor Forum.
Yeah, your show has always been a kind of a beacon for all of us. I used to do a little radio show. We called it Talking Union Labor Intensive Radio. And y'all were always who we wanted to be when we grew up. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hey, this is Judy Ansel from the Heartland Labor Forum. We're radio that talks back to the boss. And we're proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
El Cafecito del Dia explores the history of mass deportations and mixed-status families with historian Marla Ramirez, drawing connections between past injustices and today's immigration debates.
Now, Chris, I think that you actually had a part in the recording of this, and isn't this one of those where there's some Spanish mixed in as well?
Well, two things on that. First of all, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a thing that we on both the Labor Heritage Power Hour and Labor History Today, we have been making a concerted effort over the last, I'd say, year or so to really bring in. Harold, you've done some for us. Whenever Patrick and I produce that show, and whenever we're looking at a topic, a guest, or so forth, the first thing we think is, who else could we get to come in and do this interview? And partly that's just because we want to get different voices on the show, but we're also looking to really develop and support this whole bunch of folks out there that are doing stuff. And the second part is that what we've discovered is among the network, there are just a ton of tremendously talented, hosts. And so we'll often look there first. And so El Cafecito del Dia was, Carmen there was just a natural for this. And she does a beautiful job of doing the interview, mixing in some Spanish and English. For an English listener, you're going to totally get it. But the Spanish listeners will also get something out of it too. We could not have been more pleased to partner with them, and we're definitely going to have Carmen do more interviews for us.
Yeah, I just love the idea of mixing in the different languages like that, because like you say, you may not speak the language, but you absolutely get the impression of what's being said. And we could probably do with more of that.
I think it's easier to learn too when you're hearing something that you enjoy being talked about. So you hear the overlap in the etymologies, I should say.
Context is everything.
But Thejis, we don't use big words like entomology on the show, so we're just
etymology is.
He's taking me seriously. Look at his face. He's taking me totally seriously.
Honestly, you caught me off guard with that. I was like, there was a full twisting in my brain real quick.
You totally have to expect to be playing around with on this show. So you can say entomology all you want, brother.
Okay.
You are one of the gang now. And just for the record, Chris, entomology is the study of bugs.
Bienvenidos al Cafecito del Día, brought to you by the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement. Our conversations are inspired by the moments of togetherness that nuestra comunidad shares over un cafecito.
Bienvenidos. We would like to start this episodio especial with a heartfelt thank you to the Labor Radio Podcast Network for inviting us to collaborate on the Week of Labor History Today series. Hoy, we share a conversation with Marla Ramírez, autora del libro Banished Citizens, A History of Mexican-American Women Who Endure Repatriation. We explore the history of mass deportations, destierros, racial profiling, and the targeting of Mexican-American communities during the repatriation era. In this conversation, we discuss how exclusionary policies shape generations of families and why remembering this history remains so urgent en el presente. Acompáñenos. How have these cycles of exclusion and removal shaped the Mexican-American community over time? And how do you see similar patterns affecting a las comunidades latinas, a las comunidades mexicanas, a las comunidades centroamericanas today?
I argue in my book that indeed this way of understanding mixed status families that erases the legality of the members who are U.S. citizens and assumes that the entire family is undocumented in the United States has been used time and time again since the period that I write about, the interwar period. Today, we see conversations again about removing entire mixed status families, right? We see U.S. citizens being detained, being interrogated, and even finding themselves abroad because due process continues to be ignored. And racial profiling continues to be used as a way to identify those who are understood to be U.S. citizens and those who are imagined to be undocumented immigrants. Under the former Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, she was asked, what do we do with undocumented immigrants who are in the United States and are in mixed status families, right, who have U.S. citizen children and U.S. citizen wives? And one of the responses that the Trump administration provided was, we deport families together, right? Instead of creating ways to protecting mixed status families and allow them to remain together. The goal under this administration is not to keep families together, but to remove them together, similarly to what happened during the interwar period. Kristi Noem also highly publicized the self-deportation, quote-unquote self-deportation program that she led, inviting people to voluntarily remove themselves from the United States And if they fail to self-deport, the consequences will be so grave that they will have no other way to adjust their status if they were caught and deported. So those are echoes of what happened during the inner work period, right? And legacies of these earlier programs of mass removals that ignored due process and did not protect U.S. citizens and mixed status families, that now we again are hearing these ideas of self-deportation as voluntary, as a benevolent process, that if you leave, then you are allowed to come back eventually to go through the quote-unquote right way. The families who were banished during the inner work period that I read about were also told that they were going to be removed for a year, and then they could come back after a year once the economic crisis had reduced. They could come back to the United States. Obviously, that was a false promise. It proved to be a guidance, and they were not allowed to come back for decades for most of the families. Some took 60 years for them to come back. Some took more than 40 years, 46 years to come back. So that's another potential consequence that we need to be worried about in the current moment, that what happens to the families who are being targeted and unjustly removed and whose due process, constitutional rights and civil rights are being ignored, will have prolonged consequences in generations to come, similarly to how the families that I write about and work with endured these prolonged consequences in the flesh many years after the Depression and the post-World War I economic recession.
Thank you so much, Marla. Ha sido un placer y un honor share this conversation with you.
Muchas gracias, Carmen. Fue un placer platicar contigo. Thank you for the time.
The history we explore today is not just a record of what once happened. It's a warning. When those in power seek to maintain control, they often do so by dividing communities, by labeling some as outsiders, and by pushing others out, desterrándolos, whether physically or socially. Remembering this history is not just about looking back, it's about recognizing these patterns as they reappear and understanding what's at stake if we fail to challenge them. To all LACLA and union members and labor allies, we must continue demanding respect for the rule of law and for the basic human rights, especialmente cuando nuestras comunidades son atacadas and when our siblings are detained arbitrarily, denied due process, or treated as less deserving of dignity and protection. The future is not written for us, it is written by us. Nos escuchamos en el próximo Cafecito del Día. Hey, this is Carmen Rodriguez from El Cafecito del Día. At LACLA, we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with more than 200 labor radio shows and podcasts from across the country and around the world. The Labor Radio Podcast Network, where working people speaks. Find us at laborradionetwork.org.
And finally, say what? That's WATT, because it's produced by the Electrical Training Alliance, right? Electricians, WATT. What? You get it? You get it? Yeah, you get it. They mark Mental Health Awareness Month with a conversation about the core beliefs that shape how we see ourselves, react to challenges, and relate to others at work and beyond.
Say what?
Hello and welcome back. It's time for Say What. I'm your host, Cindy Sandifer. We're going to mix things up just a little bit today. Since May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to share an episode of our series, It's Good to Talk, which focuses on the importance of taking care of ourselves and each other. And it really emphasizes that this is part of safety culture. In this episode, we're talking about deep core beliefs that shape how we see ourselves, how we respond to life, and it often forms early in and through our experiences. So let's hear more about this with Dr. Charles and see what he has to say.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever had a thought about yourself that just wouldn't go away? Everybody has core beliefs. Deep ones, not just thoughts that pass through your head, but beliefs about who you are. Some are good. I can handle hard things. I figure stuff out. I'll get through it. But some are crippling to your well-being. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I always mess things up. I'll never measure up. And most of us didn't choose those. They were built inside of us early by criticism, by comparison, by being overlooked, by trying and not being seen. Sometimes due to poor parenting and by our community environment. And over time, you don't just think them, you believe the negative core beliefs. And your life is governed by them. That's why small things can hit so hard. And a single mistake can feel so big. Because it's not about the moment, it's about the core belief beneath the moment. It's like an iceberg. You only see what's above the surface. But the real weight and girth of it is beneath the surface. So how do you change something that is so strong and so powerful and so deeply buried within you and within who you are?
Dr. Charles, this part probably shouldn't be on the recording, so we'll see if this gets edited out. I'm trying to figure out how we bill this to insurance for me, like all of these It's Good to Talk episodes, because I really do feel like you've...
Let's work hard on that.
We're gonna work on that. That's for later, not for you all. All right, so you explained that our strongest reactions often come from deeply rooted core beliefs that are formed early in life. So why do these hidden beliefs carry so much power over present day me?
So it's because of the power of emotion.
Aha.
The emotional brain usually fires first.
Okay.
Usually fires off first. And then the logic is always trying to catch up to it. You know, the emotional part of your brain, the limbic system is where that's housed. The logical side, the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex is always trying to catch up to that. And core beliefs reside in the emotional part of your brain. That's where they are. And so when they chime in, it's usually over the top. That's one way that you can tell. When they start to chime in, it's usually over the top. It's, oh, what am I, just chopped liver? It's over the top, you know.
And something that to me that's really important as you were talking about that is we all have this. Mm-hmm. These are typical human things. And I think emotions, we get into this, well, I'm an emotional person. Well, I'm a logical person. And it's like, we're all a little of both. Now we might lean or we might have grown in certain maturity, that we handle things differently, but it's like we all jump to that emotional response first. Is that what I'm hearing?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
We all jump there, but even if someone with straight up logic, like Dr. Spock or somebody, if that would be a problem. That would be a problem. But the bottom line is we have an emotional mind. We have a logical mind, mm-hmm. and both of them are valuable, and we need them to move us to the wise mind. We want to operate in the wise mind. That's the balance between the two. So you don't let emotions overwhelm you. Mm-hmm. You don't let too much logic overwhelm you.
Yes.
You figure out what parts of the logic, what parts of the emotion are prevalent. Should I be applying here, and move to wise thinking.
Right. And because this is my therapy session, I was thinking how this helps me with other people. Understanding the emotional brain starts working first. So when maybe someone responds or reacts to me a certain way, it's like, well, I do this too. We all deal with it. Like it kind of maybe can help us be a little more patient or offer a little more grace. Ideally.
Ideally,
sorry.
Ideally. Yes, that is wonderful if we can achieve that, and we should all be striving to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Charles. Huge thanks to you for all that you do for us, for our industry. Your commitment to our mental health is a commitment to our industry's safety, and we absolutely appreciate you and you doing that. Big thanks to you, the listeners, for taking time to join us. Remember that we do want to hear from you. So if there are topics you would like us to cover, if you'd like to be a guest, send me an email to saywhat, SAYWATT, at electricaltrainingalliance.org. Stay powered up, and we will see you next time.
Say what?
Hey, this is Simon Sapper from the Union Jews podcast. We're proud to be part of the Labour Radio Podcast Network with more than 200 Labour radio shows and podcasts from across the USA and around the world. The Labour Radio Podcast Network, where working people speak. Find us at labourradionetwork.org.
All right, folks, that means it is time now for our speed round shows you should know. Kicking off with the Worker Power Hour. Not my Worker Power Hour. This is the other Worker Power Hour, where Harold referred to this earlier. Randy talks with Rick Smith about Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger's veto of public sector bargaining legislation, explores workplace mental health, there it is again, and looks at how community spaces help bring people together.
And that's just another example of the network synergy. It's great to see Randy talking to Rick Smith, one of the granddaddies of labor radio shows. Over on Pipe Up, Mark examines the rapid growth of data centers with UA International Representative Chris Modello discussing what it means for workers and the building trades.
On the Valley Labor Report, Alabama State Senator Sam Gibbon discusses redistricting, while labor researcher Chris Brooks explains how workers can overcome union-busting campaigns.
The Flight Deck features members of United Airlines Pilot Strategic Preparedness and Strike Committee sharing lessons from the last contract fight and preparing for the next round of negotiations.
Breaking Ground is back. It's been a while since we heard anything from this show. Operating Engineers Local 3 senior organizer Steve Kubler explains what union organizing really is, why it matters, and how members can help grow their union.
And in a special Labor History Month bonus episode, Labor Exchange explores the history of the United Mine Workers in Colorado and the ongoing fight to preserve labor's stories.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, your roundup from more than 200 shows across the Labor Radio Podcast Network.
Find links to every show at laborradionetwork.org and follow us on all the socials, #LaborRadioPod.
And hey, folks, we love hearing from you. Hit us up at info@laborradionetwork.org or, DM us on those socials that Thejis just talked about.
And if you're a regular listener to the Weekly and you want to let other people know,
you can put up flyers all over your neighborhood.
That's way too much work, Chris. And, then you have to look for the union bug and make sure they're union printed and,
Yeah, just way too much work. But here is an easier way. You could just wear a Labor Radio Podcast Network t-shirt. They're union made, come in all sizes, from small to XXX, and they come in 2 colors.
Order yours today, laborradionetwork.org.
And if you're going to Labor Notes in Chicago in June, be sure to wear it. You're going to see a bunch of other people wearing them too. This show was produced under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement.
All clips are shared under fair use, and the views expressed are those of the producers and hosts and not necessarily those of the network. Today's show was produced by Patrick Dixon, Harold Phillips, and Thejis did some work on it too. Thank you, Thejis, and of course me, Chris Garlock.
Thank you for listening to the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly.
Stay active.
Stay tuned
to your local labor radio show or podcast.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, way to bring it home.
Nicely done, guys. Nicely done. Woohoo!
First one ever.
Not the last.